Today we kick off this new series called Relationship Rehab. Not that anybody invited you strategically because they thought you needed it, but one of the things that we want to do is, a matter of fact, during our 21 days of prayer and fasting, we asked people to write in some prayer requests and just kind of share what some of their requests are, and that we would pray every single day. We would pray over those prayer requests. And can I tell you, almost 85 to 90% of the prayer requests revolved around the area of relationships. Matter of fact, majority of the counseling sessions that I do revolves around the area of relationships, where people say, Pastor, I need to figure this out. I need some help. Pastor, can you pray with us? I don't even know what to do. And really, it's a struggle, because every single one of us have relationships in our lives, whether at work or at home, and marriage, family, kids, in-laws, outlaws, people we like, people we don't like. We're all in relationships at some point. And so how do we handle relationships? So we're going to be talking about that all month long. If you're a guest of ours here, I want to welcome you. I'm going to take a moment just to say thanks for being here with us this morning. If you'll take out the program that you were given on your way in, there's a perforated side where you can take that out, fill it out with as much information as you feel comfortable. And then on your way out, there's a Blue Guest kiosk where we have a pair of movie tickets that we would love to give you. If you'll just give them that, we'll give you a pair of movie tickets. Our way of saying thanks for being with us this morning. What I'd like for you to do real quickly is let's play a game. Let's play a little game. Everybody likes to play a little game first thing in the morning. Super Bowl Sunday. Patriots. Bears? Go Bears. Okay. That's all that really matters there. We know how that's going to go. But you never know. You never know. Let's play a little game. Let's play a little game real quick. What I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to take a deep breath in. Hold it. Now let it out. Some of you are like, is he going to make us hold it forever? Let's try it again. A deep breath in. Out. One more time. In. Out. The reason we did that was to say if you brushed your teeth today. The guy in front of you. No. The reason we did that is because that is a perfect example of what relationships are supposed to be like. That many of us in our life, we have relationships around us that are life-giving. They are a breath of fresh air. They are I needed that. We have relationships in our life, and that's what God desires, is for us to have these life-giving. If you're not taking breaths in, it is not life-giving, and you will die. Man, there are relationships that you need in your life that you could just breathe in. It's life-giving. It feels good. I enjoy it. I like it. But how many of you know the opposite is true? There are life-taking, life-sucking. There are drainers in your life that just kind of... It's those ones when your wife goes, hey, guess who we're going to hang out with tonight? And she tells you, and you go, there's that breath out. You already know what's about to happen. Oh, we got to listen to his stories all day long. We got to listen to her complain about their marriage, and then him talk about how amazing the marriage is. We've got to, what, you don't like my friends? Oh, I love your friends. I love it when they leave. Man, we all have, how many of you have relationships like that in your life? They're just like, they're draining. Maybe on the job, there are people when you see them, or you know you have to have a meeting with them, you're like, them? You have to prepare yourself for some of these people in your life. And so every relationship in our life is either a breath of fresh air, it is life-giving, and others are life-taking. They're draining, they're a breath out. And so all month long, we're going to be talking about this understanding of relationships. And today we're going to talk about givers and takers in relationships. Next week, we're going to do, I'm going to do part 2 of a sermon I did probably about a year ago that I just was praying, and we were there in Cancun, and the Lord spoke really clearly to me there. That's easy to hear from the Lord in Cancun, especially when it's negative 50 here. But one of the things I felt like the Lord said, I want you to share this message again, and I shared about how in Proverbs there's 3 main characters, the wise, the fool, and the evil. the wise, the fool, and the evil. And how do you respond to those three kind of people in your life? So next week, we're going to talk about part 2 of that. How do you respond to wise relationships, foolish relationships, and evil relationships? So we're going to talk about that next week. It'll be really cool on that one. But today, we're going to look at the story in 1 Samuel chapter 18 where Saul is the king. And if you remember, David is the one who kills Goliath, and everything started out in this relationship really good. Some of you in the first part of this message, you're going to relate. You're going to go, I know what that's like. Everything started out really well. Everything was good. Saul, who is the king, is a giver to David. David is the one who kills Goliath. If you remember the story, a real quick recap, nobody wants to go out there. They're all intimidated by Goliath and all the giants, and so Saul says, hey, listen, if anybody wants to go out and kill Goliath, I'll give you, there's some rewards that I'll give you. One of them was to marry his daughter, Michal, who was said to be very beautiful. And so David says, listen, I'm in on that. Didn't have to pay taxes and all these kind of things. And so David was like, I'm in, let's do it. And so when David decides, I'm going to go out there, Saul says, listen, hey, before you go out there, let me give you, he's in a giving relationship, I'm going to give you, let me give you my armor, let me give you my sword, let me give you my daughter's hand in marriage, let me give you some rewards. So they start off this relationship as a giving relationship. But it very quickly turns from a giving relationship into a taking relationship. Many of you have encountered this inside different relationships or on the job or even in marriage or dating relationships, friendship relationships, where all of a sudden things started off good. And then there's a but. How many of you know that but? Well, not, you know. Everybody's got one of those kind of stories where all of a sudden everything is going well and then it turns into a taking relationship. Here's where I believe things began to change. 1 Samuel chapter 18, you'll see it up on the screen. Verse 6, it says this, when the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet who? Now watch this. They all came out to meet King Saul with singing and dancing and joyful songs with their timbrels and lyres. And as they danced, they sang this song that went along like this. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Oh. I mean, you got to think about it as the king. You're coming in and they're singing and it's awesome and they're singing about me and they're doing all the dancing and it's all about me, and their song says that Saul has slain his thousands. Yes. And then he hears the part of the song that says, but David has slain his tens of thousands. And you see it on the screen there. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. He didn't like that part of the song. And I believe it's in that moment where all of a sudden David and Saul's relationship began to change from giver to taker. Watch this. It says, Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only 1,000? What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. Everything was good until Saul gets offended and becomes jealous. And when offense and jealousy comes in, the relationship began to take a turn for the worse. And the Bible says that Saul kept his eye on David from that moment on. And some of you know what that's like, where all of a sudden offense comes in and now we view somebody different than we've ever viewed them. We're now jealous of what they have and what they do, and now we view them differently. Today, I want to give you real quickly 3 characteristics of takers and then 3 characteristics of givers when it comes to relationship. Number one is just simply this: takers are jealous of you. Your relationship can start off well, and that's mainly how a lot of relationships will start off. They start off very well. Everything is good, like, oh, you're amazing. It's a giving relationship. Everything's awesome. But then something changes. Something happens, and takers are often jealous of people. And this is, think about it, David, all he was doing was serving and defending the king. David was doing what he would have normally done. He didn't do anything different. He didn't do anything out of the ordinary. David was saying, hey, listen, the relationship that I am in with you is I am here to serve you. I am here to defend you. And David did exactly that. But Saul got jealous. When David had slain his 10,000, Saul should have been the one cheering the loudest. Saul should have been the one going, dude, come on, look at what we did. Try to take a little credit for it. Try to be like, man, isn't that awesome? Look at what we did. Look at how we accomplished things. Look at what's taken place. But jealousy will destroy any relationship that you have. Jealousy in a marriage will literally destroy marriages. Jealousy in friendships, jealousy in employment, jealousy in dating, jealousy in family, jealousy with siblings will literally destroy the relationship, the closeness, the tightness of what could have been. I tell the story often. Matter of fact, Shannon and I were talking to the youth pastor in Chicago who took over my position when Shannon and I were there. We were youth pastors in the city for 5 years, and the guy who now has taken over my place was one of our students. And I tell the story of when Shannon and I did all these events, and we started out with 30 kids, and we had a couple hundred kids, and it was awesome, and we did pretty well. This is kind of like that Saul slaying 1,000, but David slaying 10,000s. And all of a sudden, Joey puts on his first event by himself, and he packs the place out. He has like I had 100 and something extra people coming. He had thousands of people. Oh, man, he calls, oh, pastor, it was awesome. We didn't know what to do. We had people in the lobby. We opened up all the doors in the lobby. The lobby was full. It got so full, we started pulling people up on the stage. We had people sitting on the floor. Every seat was taken. And I got to be honest with you, there was a moment I was like, what? What? He should have failed. I didn't do it with him. But that was just for a brief moment, because for me, I'm like, Joey, that's why you're awesome. That's why you're amazing. Man, I'm telling you, God knew what he was going to do with you. God knew this whole thing was planned out. This guy literally, if I traveled and did a small camp for 25 kids, this guy's going to Ireland and preaching to thousands of people. This guy literally was on the phone like, hey, man, just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. We're FaceTiming him. He's like, oh, thanks. Man, hopefully I can get out of the polar vortex because I'm supposed to be in Houston training youth pastors and leaders tomorrow. I'm like, come on. And Shannon and I just sat there and encouraged him and cheered him on. Why? Because he's doing exactly what God's called him to do. But the moment I allowed jealousy to come in, I begin to view him differently. I begin to view our relationship differently. And all of a sudden, we're not close like we were anymore. Why? Because I allowed jealousy to enter into my heart. Saul allowed his jealousy to destroy what could have been a powerful relationship between him and David. Man, think about the kingdoms that they could have accomplished and conquered. Think about all the great things that God could have done between the two of these mighty men, this powerhouse together. All the things that God could have done together. And see, givers will celebrate the good things in your life, but takers will always diminish your success to make themselves look better. Let me say that again. Givers will celebrate the good things in your life, but takers will always diminish your success to make themselves look better. Romans chapter 12 says it like this: rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Not too long ago, Shannon and I were sitting with somebody, and they were telling us about a situation, and these people there was a little offense. There was another pastor, a friend of ours, that had caused something, and it just didn't sit well with Shannon and I. And I remember Shannon and I kind of sitting there and kind of talking about it, processing it a little bit, and somebody had said, hey, I heard this happen, and I just, man, what do you think? And it was almost like they were trying to go, where you at? You have instigators in your life, or your kids sometimes can do that. And then it's like, hey, what do you think? What do you think about that? And my response was simply this. Man, I love the scripture. It says, hey, I rejoice with those who rejoice, and I weep with those who weep. And if my friend is rejoicing, then I rejoice with them. And if my friend is weeping, then I weep with them. Man, that shut down that conversation like it was nobody else's business. Why? Because Shannon and I love this pastor, and that's just a truth. Like, we've been able to sit down and make sure everything was good. We cleared our hearts, cleared their heart. Everybody was good. And it was just one of those things where God restores the relationships, and then you have to be able to look at it and go, wait a minute. If that makes them excited, then I'm excited. And if it makes them sad, then I'm sad. That's that weeping and rejoicing part. And David was just saying, hey, listen, I'm just here to serve you. He was doing the right thing, and Saul began to view the relationship differently. And when David was celebrating, Saul began to go, wait a minute, something's not right here. What about me? See, takers want the attention brought back to them. They'll do everything they can to draw the attention back to them. Number one, takers are jealous of you. Number two, takers will intentionally try to hurt you. Takers will intentionally try to hurt you. For unhealthy people, here's the deal. Unhealthy people, this makes them feel better about themselves. Takers will intentionally try to hurt you, and it makes them feel good. David received Saul's daughter as this reward for killing Goliath. It's that part of that giving relationship. And then David asked the question to Saul, or to one of Saul's messengers, hey, what else? Because I'm really digging your daughter, and she's digging me, and I think this is going well. And so hey, real quickly, is there anything else that I owe you before I marry your daughter? And I love this because, watch this, you'll see Saul's response in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 25. Saul says, hey, here's what I want you to do. He tells the messenger, say to David, the king wants no other price for the bride. We're good. If you didn't check your kids in, sorry. Other than 100 Philistine foreskins. You can explain that. Or you could have had him in children's ministry not hearing this. Hey, we're good? No, David, you don't own anything else. We're solid. We're good. We're amazing. Other than I want you to go out, and I want 100 Philistine foreskins to take revenge on his enemies. And watch this. Here it is. Why would he do that? Because Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistine. It was a setup. It was a setup. He intentionally tried to set David up, and he said, listen, here's what we'll do. I don't have to do anything. I'll keep my hands clean. No. I mean, if you're going to marry my daughter, you owe something, but yet my hands are clean. Why don't you go out and face 100 Philistines, and I want you to face them by yourselves, and I want you to go get them, and this is what I want you to do. It was a setup. Notice the pattern? With hurting people, angry people, takers. You hurt me, so not for Saul. See, many of you think, if you hurt me, I hurt you. For takers, it's you hurt me and I will kill you. Notice Saul? Saul was setting this whole thing up from the very beginning. You offended me, you hurt me. Yes, you get to do this, but I will make sure that this never happens in your life. Because takers will say, listen, if you hurt, I'm out to get you. I will do everything to destroy you. And he says, listen, I'm going to send David out to the 100 Philistines, and it's a setup. So he dies. But God was with him. See, that's the power of offense. If you hurt me, I'm going to come after you. We see this on the job. You see this in you get promoted. All of a sudden, so you get promoted and somebody else doesn't get promoted. Watch out. You promoted them. Them. Did you know what they did? And all of a sudden now, what used to be a giving relationship becomes a taking relationship, and now they want to take, you're going to promote. Let me tell you what they did. They've been taking erasers. Dude, it's a big offense. Like the whole Sharpie dry marker thing. Like I've seen it. That's company dime right there. I mean, how many coffee breaks do they need? I mean, seriously, do you see what they're doing? I mean, do you see how many times they take? I mean, how long does a lunch break need to be? I don't take lunch breaks. We see this on the job. We see this in marriages. You hurt me. You offended me. You upset me. I'm jealous of what's happening in your life. I'm jealous of this, and I don't like this. And all of a sudden, it's I'm out to get you. You did this to me, so I'm going to do this to you. We see this in marriages. We see this in careers. We see this in families. A taker relationship is one-sided. If you're not with me, then you're against me. And if you're against me, I'm coming after you. Listen, God has more for your life and wants to give you giving relationship, not just taking relationships. This is why we created community groups here at our church. This is, on your way out, there's at both exits, there's going to be our community group brochures. This is life-giving. This is that breath of air in. This is like that life-giving. This is what I need in my life. This refreshes me. This is helpful to me. This is life-giving. This is what I need right now in my life. And so we created different kind of community groups that are out there. There's Bible studies and burger studies. There's relational, there's spiritual. There's all different kind of groups out there. You can pick up one of these catalogs and then you can follow along with that and say, hey man, which group, where do we need to go? What do we need to do? And allow God to start breathing life back into you through different relationships and say, hey, this is what I have for you. So I want to encourage you on your way out today, make sure you grab one of these catalogs, stop by one of the tables there, sign your name up, say, hey, I just want some more information on how to get this thing going. Men, can I just speak to you for a second? Women, just take a commercial break. Go to Cancun for a second. Men, look here. Come on. Women aren't listening. They're totally tuned out. They don't multitask right now. Don't worry about it. It's us. We froze them in time. Here it is. Come on, men. Come on. Let's lead. Let's lead. Let's stop trying to demand it in our home that we're going to be leaders in our home. This is what the scripture said, that we lead spiritually. That we begin to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. Hey, listen, you better figure out crochet night because we're going to community group. And I know where that, you listen, hey, we're going to start one. We're going to be a part of one. We're going to invest in our life. We're going to invest in our marriage. We're going to make sure that we're growing. We're going to make sure that our kids are growing. We're going to do this. All right, women, tune back in. Hey, and so all of a sudden, Saul is saying, listen, this isn't okay. I'm going to figure out how to get David. Because takers will always intentionally try to hurt you. Number 3, here it is. Takers will view you as the bad guy. Not only do they view you as the bad guy, but they will also paint you as the bad guy to other people at every chance they get, through every conversation they have. They will always paint you as the bad guy. In every conversation that could come up, somehow their offense of what you have done will come into play. They'll begin to have this conversation. They'll begin to talk about what you've done. 1 Samuel 18 says this, when Saul realized that the Lord was with David, and how much now his daughter Michal loved him, Saul became even more afraid of him. And he remained David's enemy for the rest of his life. Watch this. Instead of seeing David as his greatest asset, instead of seeing David going, listen, we could make this thing, man, we could really make this thing work. Listen, LeBron, if we could just get you to kind of humble yourself for a moment, we could make this thing work. We can make it happen. But Saul wasn't willing to humble himself and change his offense and deal with it in a right and healthy way and say, hey, listen, I'm struggling with some of these things. I got some offenses in my heart, and I need to let it out. I need to let it go. Rather than dealing with those things, he held on to it. And the Bible says that Saul viewed David as his enemy for the rest of his life. And the only person that hurt from that was Saul. He lost faithful friend. He lost influence. He lost relationships with his family. And there will be times in your life that people will view you as the bad guy for doing the right thing. What did David do? What did David do wrong? He served his king. He defended his king. He fought for his king. He stood up when nobody else would stand up. He attacked a giant when nobody else would do it. He did all the right things, and yet now somebody's viewing him as the bad guy. Why? Because of jealousy and offense. When it gets into our heart, it literally corrupts and damages the relationship that we're in. And we become takers rather than givers. Unhealthy people will never accept healthy boundaries as a good thing as long as they are bitter. And I just encourage you, save yourself some drama. Save yourself some time. Allow them to get to a point. You could pray for them, but I don't think there's really a lot of help for you to try to be able to say, hey, listen, let me try this again. Hey, let me try this again. If you keep trying and you keep getting hurt, then what you have to do is you have to begin to start taking steps back, create a gap, create separation, a healthy boundary, put boundaries in your life that say, hey, listen, I get it. This is you. This is me. This is where we are. And when things change, this is where we can come back to. But for right now, I've got to put a gap. I've got to put a separation between us. Hebrews says it like this: watch carefully that no one falls short of God's favor, that no well of bitterness springs up to trouble who? You. Notice how the bitterness in my heart doesn't trouble the other people. The bitterness in my heart troubles me. And watch what he says here. Make sure that no well of bitterness springs up and troubles you, and throw many others off the path. Do you realize that when bitterness comes in and affects my life, that it actually affects other people's lives as well? That it has the power. Bitterness has the power to throw people around you off. It has the power to change people's perception. It has the power to damage relationships. Why? Because we just didn't decide, hey, I'm just not going to deal with the bitterness and the offense in my heart. Rather saying, hey, listen, let's deal with this in a right way. Let's deal with this in a healthy way. And the Bible tells us exactly how to do that. Our staff will tell you when people say, hey, listen, I got a problem with so-and-so. Oh, man, I'll listen. I will listen. I promise you, I listen. But then I go, okay, now have you talked to them? You should talk to that person. People will come in for counseling. Wow, pastor, you know, they did this and they said that. Oh, I'll listen. I promise I listen. And then I just say, have you talked to them? And can I tell you, most of the time, probably about 80% of the time, people go, no, I haven't talked to them. And I'll coach them to, hey, here's how I think you ought to talk to them. Maybe you ought to process it this way, talk to them this way. Matthew 18 gives us a clear direction on how to handle that when it comes to healthy relationships. And so sometimes if that doesn't work, here's what I would tell you. The Bible gives us guidelines on how to do that. Go to the person, bring somebody with you. The next time, have that conversation. But at the end of the day, there are times where you may need to separate yourselves to create healthy boundaries. And some of you say, listen, I'm dealing with family members. How do I deal with that? Here's what I would say is you just have to you got to hit mute. Sometimes you just have to mute their influence in your life. And now listen, I got to hang out with you because we're family and I get it. I don't really care for you. My wife likes you guys and I don't really care for you, but I'll sit here. How's the game? Who do you think's going to win the Super Bowl? But other than that, when they start to try to give influence, it's just kind of like, now, I don't literally physically do that in front of them. Don't do that. That could start a whole nother, what are you doing? Nothing. But mentally inside your own mind, just all you got to do is just be like, Just mute their influence. Listen, I can have fun with you. Hey, we can have a good time. But your influence is limited in my life because you are not at a healthy place. and you have become a taker in this relationship. You have been a breath out rather than a breath in. And so here's what happens. David literally begins to separate himself from Saul, and God brings him this unlikely friendship with this young man named Jonathan. Jonathan is actually the son of Saul. Watch this, 1 Samuel chapter 19. We move from chapter 18 to 19. Move quickly here today. It simply says this: Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. You hurt me, so I will kill you. Take a relationship. But Jonathan had taken a great liking to David and warned him, hey, my father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. Listen, you got to get this. Write this down if you're a note taker. If you're not a note taker, write this down. 3 characteristics of givers. Number 1, givers will be your greatest advocate in the midst of war. Givers will be your greatest advocate in the midst of war. In other words, what do you mean? Number 1, givers are loyal. Givers are loyal. Givers are loyal. Givers are loyal. Hey, I know something came up. Man, many of you know this. When somebody hurts you or offends you, and now you feel like, hey, I can go and talk to them. Why? Because they're loyal. They understand we're going to have issues and there's going to be some problems. But think about it. When Saul dies, who was supposed to be the king? It would be his son, Jonathan. But Jonathan knew that the throne wasn't his and God's hand was on David. And so he says, listen, Jonathan goes, listen, Saul, here's what I know. I know when my father dies, man, I know the throne is mine. But here's the deal. God's with you. God's hand is upon you, and you are supposed to be the next king. And so here's the deal. If God is with you, I am with you. And I am okay giving up my royalty. I'm okay giving this up because if God's with you, I'm with you. And I am more loyal to God than I am to my dad. Man, that's loyalty. Loyalty always goes up. It never goes down. And so Jonathan was loyal to the Lord because he knew that God was using David. I can tell you from experience, no matter if you're loyal to healthy or unhealthy relationships, there is always a price to pay. If you are loyal to healthy relationships, you're loyal to the Lord, you do what's right, even when sometimes you feel like, man, nobody's going to appreciate, nobody's going to like, but you do the right thing before the Lord, and you are loyal, you are faithful, you are obedient to him. God says, listen, I will bless that. But can I also tell you, if you say, hey, you know what, my relationship over here matters more, and I'm faithful to the relationship more than I am to the Lord, can I tell you there is a price to pay for that as well? And it never goes well. It never ends well. There's loss of relationships, loss of influence. Trust is broken. Joy is lost. People become angry and bitter. All of a sudden, bitterness begins to come in and control. Not only you, but also, as the scripture said, those around you. Man, I want to encourage you to be a giver when it comes to relationship. Be a giver. Be loyal. Number 2, givers have your back. Givers have your back. Watch this. Saul sends out 3,000 men to kill David. And first thing that Jonathan does is Jonathan warns David. He's loyal. And he warns him and he says, listen, I got your back. Listen, God's with you. I'm with you. I got your back. Don't worry about a thing. But right now, you need to go and hide. You need to take care. I got you. Watch what verse 4 says. Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul, his father, and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant, David. So here he is. Saul is willing to kill anybody who gets in the way of getting to David. Why? Because I got jealous and I got bitter, and bitterness begins to change the way that I view you, but it also is going to change the way the other people. 3,000 men were sent out. Why? Because David did the right thing. David killed the giant when nobody else would do it. David stepped up when nobody else would step up. And now all of a sudden Saul is offended because some women sang a song about him. And because you offended me, because you hurt me, now I'm going to kill you. And Jonathan comes in and goes, whoa, hold on a second. He's risking it. because he's about to stand up for the one person that hurt him to his own father. And he says, wait. Let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you. What he has done has benefited you greatly. See, takers will always forget what you have done for them. But God will bring givers into your life. When you are faithful and obedient and loyal unto the Lord, God will bring givers into your life who have your back. You know you have a giver relationship when someone will defend you when you're not even around. When someone will say, hey, I hear what you're saying, and I just want you to know that's not the so-and-so that I know. Hey, I hear you. I hear you, but here's the deal. You need to stop talking about them, and you need to start talking to them. Man, you know you have a giving relationship when somebody goes, hey, you know what? I was talking to so-and-so, and they suggested I would come talk to you. You know you have a giving relationship when they're saying, hey, not around me, not happening. You're going to have to find somewhere else to talk about, or maybe just go to them and deal with it the right way. I know people who say, hey, I'm willing to risk an unhealthy relationship while guarding a healthy, life-giving relationship in my life. Givers are loyal. Givers have your back. Last thing is this right here. Ben, if you'll come. Number 3 is this. Givers treat you like family. The Bible says that the friendship between Jonathan and David was so strong that Jonathan, in 1 Samuel 18, verse 4, Jonathan took off his robe that he was wearing. He gave it to David. There's a royal robe. Now understand this, that there's a lot more than what we're just reading here. He takes off his royal robe along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. This is the young man. Jonathan is who's next in line. When Saul dies, Jonathan is the next person. And back then, the robe, the royalty of what they wore and what they had signified those things. And so what David did was not just say, hey, here's my robe. David said, here's the deal. Your royalty, your family, you're next in line. God's with you, and he is all for you, and I'm with you, and I'm for you. And so this doesn't belong to me anymore. This belongs to you. And here's the deal. Wherever you go, people will know that you are royalty. People will know that I got your back. People will know that not to mess with you. And when they see that sword, and when they see that tunic, and when they see your bow, and when they see the arrows, they're going to know. But nobody's going to be messing with you because you're a part of our family. You're good to go. And that's the relationship that God desires to have with you and me. Where he says, no, you're royalty. When we are in a right relationship, man, you are royalty. And he says, I got your back. I want to be that life-giving relationship for you. No matter where you go, people will know that I am with you. I am for you. Wherever you go. David would later become king, as we know him to be King David. But I want you to think about this. David would have never been king if it wasn't for a Jonathan who stood up for him. Which tells us that it is key, it is prevalent. Relationships play a big part of our life in becoming who God has called us to be. To do what God has called us to do. It is relationships that will either help us get there or take us further away from there. It was Jonathan who said, man, God's with you, and I want to help you become who God has called you to become. Life-giving. But there are life-taking relationships like a Saul who says, but I'm coming for you because I need to be the man. I need the attention. I'm hurt by you. I'm offended by you. And rather than dealing with it in a right way, the Bible says that Saul struggled with this for the rest of his life. The only way we'll live up to our full potential is in a giving relationship, helping people get where they're supposed to be. There's some of us who have hit our lid because of relationships. leadership wise, maybe even on the job. Maybe you've been hanging around, but we've been friends since ever since we got each other the job, and this is just how we do it, and this is what we do. And God's saying, listen, you need to take this relationship out, and I can raise you up. But what if I lose this relationship? Listen, Saul and David had this giving relationship. It becomes from giving now to taking, and he has to create a separation. He separates himself from Saul, and then God brings him an unlikely friend through the son of the man who hated him to help him become exactly who God called him to be. Life-giving, life-taking. Normally at this part of the message, I'd ask you, hey, why don't you close your eyes and bow your heads? But today I'm going to ask you to keep your head up and eyes wide open and process these next 3 questions by yourself. Who is the taker in your life? Who's the taker in your life? Now, do not elbow. Who's a taker in your life? Who do you need to separate yourself from? Who do you need to create healthy boundaries with? Who is a taker? Who's coming? Who is it? Who's a taker in your life? Who's a taker? Number 2, who's a giver? Who's a giver in your life? Who's a giving relationship that every time you turn around, they just have the gift of encouragement. They're just, oh my gosh, it's so great to see. Oh, and look at how you're doing, and you're doing so well, and you're looking so slim, and you're like, not really, but I love you. Who's a giver in your life? Hey, how can I help you to get where you want to be? Who's a giver? Not a taker. Who's a giver? Can I just encourage you before you even walk out of this room, would you shoot him a text message today? Hey, was in service today, thought about you. Thanks for being a giving relationship. Who's one person you could text today and say, thanks for being. Why? Here's what happens when you do that. Now you become a giver into their life. And you don't ask them for anything. You know, thanks for being a giver. Hey, by the way, Super Bowl, I know I was totally supposed to bring the food over for Super Bowl, but can't do it. Can you get it? We'll come over, destroy your house, hang out with you, make a huge mess, and leave late at night. Doesn't that sound like fun? Thanks for being a giver. Don't do that, because you'll be the taker, and they'll separate themselves from you. Who could you send a text to right now and say, hey, thanks for being a giver? Who's the takers? Who's the giver? And then let me ask you this question. Head up, wide open eyes. Which one are you? Which one are you? Are you a giver? Or are you a taker? Taking. Hey, I need Hank and you. Or a giver. I just want you to know I'm praying. Anything we could do. How can I help? Cheering you on. Hey, I know you're going through a rough time. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to talk about it. I just want you to know that I'll weep with you. Hey, I know you just got that promotion, that raise, and I'm excited for you. Man, way to go. Hey, I rejoice with you. I'm going to rejoice with those who need to be rejoicing. I'm going to weep with those who are weeping. Why? Because I'm in a life-giving relationship. So here's the question. Which one are you? And today, you have the opportunity to make a course correction in your life and say, today I need to be life-giving. I know there's some relationships, and if you're like me, there's some relationships that I'm life-taking. And there's some relationships that I'm life-giving. So even while preparing this message, I started thinking of people in my life that I'm just taking. Pastors in my life that I'll go, hey, how do you do this? And hey, what do you do? And when this happens, what do you do? And hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And how? And this morning just simply sent out a big text message to pastors in my life and said, just want to say thank you. And I took some time to pray for you this morning. And I just want you to know I value you and I value our friendship. Didn't ask for anything. Just said thanks. Thanks for being a friend. And these relationships where I'm not so good and I need to start adding value? Who are the takers? Who are the givers? Which one are you? Would you close your eyes and bow your heads as we